Welcome to another episode of Strategic Moves with Lou. I'm Mike Hendren. I'm a broadcaster here in Wichita Falls, Texas. I'm also a licensed real estate agent. I happen to be one of the agents for Strategic Realty. And with me is Lou Italis. She is the broker-owner of Strategic Realty, hence the name of the program, Strategic Moves with Lou. How you doing?
Good morning.
It's been a crazy couple of weeks.
Yeah, we went from negative 10 to 70.
Yeah, well, we had a 90-degree temperature difference in 7 days.
Wow.
A 90-degree temp difference in 7 days. Only in Texas could we do this.
No kidding.
I think
I think if the most shocking thing for me was one day I drove out into the neighborhood and there was big, huge snow dunes everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
And then the next day I drive out, nothing.
Yeah.
It's completely gone.
That's the nice thing about winter here. It doesn't last very long. It's not like Iowa.
Blink and you'll miss it.
Where winter starts like July 8th and ends in June or something,
right.
Whatever they go through.
Yeah.
But it's winter is very short-lived here, and it's rare that we have episodes like this where we have these huge, blizzards, 15, 16 inches of snow. That doesn't happen every winter here.
I've only been in Wichita Falls for 10 years, and there's really only been 2 snowstorms during that 10-year period. We had one in 2009.
Yeah, the Christmas Eve 2009 blizzard.
Yeah, which was which was like 2 feet, I think, of snow, but it only lasted like a day.
Well, and we had travel issues for more than a day. But we also didn't have the cold that we had with this.
Yeah, the cold snap that we had this time around was completely bizarre.
So, in the world of real estate, the weather, this kind of got in the way of a couple of things, I guess. It's kind of hard
Lots of plumbing issues.
show houses when there's 24 inches of snow on the ground
that
and
is
the roads
correct.
are blocked. But
property management became a major issue this week.
That's one of the things we're going to talk about today is property management. And there's a lot of property managers today and in the last several days that have been dealing with plumbing leaks.
Yeah.
And when you have temperatures in this part of the country that drop to negative 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 degrees, you're going to have busted pipes because our plumbing systems here are not designed and not insulated for that kind of cold.
Correct. And that's why
it's not typical.
You have to be aware of any kind of temperature snaps like that as a property owner in general. One of the most common ways, especially for us for real estate agents, is we try to winterize a home. Especially, I do a lot of that with bank-owned properties. Whenever I list bank-owned properties, I'm required to go out to the property and inspect it and make sure that everything is the same. Somebody hasn't broken into the house, and one of the things that we deal with a lot is the cold. So if you're at a vacant house, you try to open up all the cabinets underneath the sink. Like the underneath the sink, you want to make sure that the cabinets are open so that warm air can get in there and keeps the pipes from freezing. And even my own mom, I talked to her about it, and she was like, "Yeah, the bathrooms they really froze up." And I'm like, "Okay, well, the way to keep that from happening is just open up your cabinets.
Yeah,
open up the cabinets and let that warm air get in there, and it'll keep it from freezing up." And then from a property management perspective, make sure that the tenants are doing the same thing. So when a property manager has those kinds of things, we try to check in with our tenants to make sure that they're okay. I think overall we got pretty lucky.
Yeah, I think so.
From a property management
perspective
on our end, we only had I think there was only one tenant that had an issue as far as their plumbing was concerned.
And you talked about winterizing a property, and that involves, the water is shut off, the lines are blown out to get excess water out of the lines. You use a special kind of antifreeze in the toilets,
right?
That's non-toxic because automotive antifreeze is very toxic,
right?
So you don't want to, use that. But there's a special antifreeze. I think RV antifreeze works in this case. There's a certain type of
I have
RV antifreeze you can use.
I've never done the winterizing myself.
Yeah.
Usually, whenever we have a bank-owned property, they send out field services to take care of
Right.
that for us. All I
Right.
need to do is just make sure that if there is an inspection, that it gets re-winterized after the
Right.
inspector's done.
Right. And there's, when you have to put the antifreeze in. We have -9 temperatures, and as we had here, the power went out for a large
Yes,
number
and
of
that
people.
was, I think that's the main problem for a lot of people, is that whenever they lost the power, they couldn't help the freeze.
Right.
I mean, that was just it was gonna happen regardless of what you did. I mean, there was nothing that you could do. I actually had an inspection yesterday on a property that it was a brand new house, beautiful house, and this is another thing to consider whenever you're building a home, and it doesn't happen very often. Obviously, I mean, this was once in a 30-year snap, but he was telling me that his water heater, he has a tankless water heater, and the tankless water heater froze and the pipes busted, and the reason why he's having the water got through into the walls and stuff like that, so and the floors and stuff like that, so he's having to get that all taken care of. But the reason why his did was because when he built the house with the tanks on the outside. So they weren't inside the property. They weren't in the heat. They weren't in your primary residence. So all of his plumbing components froze.
Right.
Because they were outside on there was like an access. He built it to where all of his appliances fixtures were on the outside of the property, which I don't see very you don't see very often here in Wichita Falls. So that was, he was trying to, I guess, he was trying to remove it from the, maximize his interior space by doing that, and in doing so caused a problem for himself.
He created a problem.
Yeah, created a problem.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, but
Those toilets, when they freeze up, they'll bust on you. A friend of mine, they had that. They lived in Minnesota, I think it was, Michigan. In Michigan for a time, and they had that happen there in a power outage. The whole house got really cold. It's minus 20 degrees outside, and the toilet literally just fell apart. I mean, it literally broke and fell apart.
Got too brittle.
Yeah, well, that water freezes. What happens to water when it freezes? It expands,
yeah.
and so it just takes everything out. So it's really important. Yeah, property managers. Let's talk a little bit about the task, the job of a property manager. What are some of the things, aside from winterization of a home, making sure that's done and all that? What are some of the things a property manager has to do in their task, in their job?
Well, some of the services, I guess, is the services a property manager will provide. Is that they're going to get you, obviously, a qualified tenant. That's what their job is to do, is to make sure that you have to screen your tenants, to make sure that you have a qualified tenant that's not going to that's going to pay the rent.
Right.
That's their primary goal. But here's a little bit of a list of things that property managers do. They do also delinquency management. So, for instance, if we have a tenant, especially now with COVID going on right now, there's a lot of people that are struggling with this. You have a tenant that hasn't paid their rent. We do the notices. We make sure that we attempt to collect any and all monies from the tenant as best as possible. We can do also violation issuances. So for instance, if a tenant, you drive by the property at some point and the tenant is not taking care of the yard, then you would give them a notice for the yard maintenance. A lot of it has to do, a lot of the responsibilities of a property manager are going to be dependent upon the owner itself. So if you want certain things done, then you would tell your property manager, and they'll make sure that those things are done. Whether it's regular inspections on the inside of the property, or to maintain the yard, or it just really depends on the owner itself. Some of the standard services. I mean, there's there's a few property managers here in town that have probably a list of all the services that they provide that they would give you a list of so that you can review and see which ones work for you. So if you're looking for a property manager, the ideal thing is to shop around a little bit, talk to a couple of different companies, find out what their services are that they provide and what their fees are, and then you just decide what it is that you're looking at for.
Now, obviously, a property owner, the more involved they want you as the property manager to be, there's going to be a cost for those services.
Correct,
The more stuff you got to do, the more work, especially the more legwork that's involved in it.
Right.
Obviously, the more you're going to pay for that. So there's I guess most companies that do this are going to have a schedule of fees that they're going to charge for various levels of service.
Correct. I mean, the standard fee for just a single family home is usually about 10%. Okay. That's pretty common in
10% of the rent.
10% of the rent collected.
Okay, gotcha.
So, and then anything, if there's a duplex or multiple units, if an owner has multiple units, then that fee can go down, can be reduced at that point. So it just really depends on how many units we're talking about here. And then another thing that also I would suggest is talking to your CPA or talking to an accountant, talking to somebody that does tax returns, because your level of involvement as an owner will also determine how you can deduct it on your taxes. If this is a passive income and you just have a property manager doing everything for you, so meaning that you don't do anything, then it's considered a passive income. And then there's only a certain amount of loss that you can take every year on your taxes. You have to have some sort of level, whether it's 50% some sort of level of activity as an owner in order to be able to take all the loss if there's a significant loss. Like if you went and you did all these repairs to the house or something like that and you want to claim that loss, you have to it has to be a non-passive.
So the more responsibility you pass on to a property manager, the less of that loss you as an owner you can.
I would confirm that with a CPA, because it's been a long time since I've dealt with it on that end. I'm a property manager for myself, so I can deduct everything.
Right.
But a lot of the people that I property manage for may have a different scenario.
All right. So you get with your accountant, you get with your CPA, and they can walk you through exactly what the rules are. And that's the thing, especially when you're dealing with taxes. There's so many rules,
and they change regularly.
They do.
It just depends on what administration we're in.
Well, and that's why you pay the CPA, because their job is to keep up with those rule changes and those law changes. And so you don't have to. Right. That's why you pay them the big bucks. That you have to pay them to keep up with that. But
I'm looking here to see if I can find a list of the. Okay, so this is kind of like a list of things. The preparation of that's not it. Rent collection is one of the main things that we do. Rent collection and tenant acquiring a qualified tenant. Maintenance and repairs, we will be like the point of contact for the tenant. So we may not do the repairs ourselves. We'll have a handyman or somebody that can do them. And bill payment, usually we won't pay the mortgage or anything like that. So we'll pay all the bills that we incur maintaining the property, but anything above that, taxes, insurance, and mortgage payments, that would be the landlord would need to do. And then we also give you a financial report at the end of the year. So you get a 1099 from a property manager that will outline what your income was for the year and what your expenses were that we incurred directly for the year.
Okay.
That's something that you'll get a report on every year. There's different levels also of reporting as far as monthly is concerned. Sometimes a owner will require that they want monthly reports. Usually it's a monthly report. When you get the payment for the money that the property manager collected, usually they'll send you a report along with that payment.
So as far as a property manager and how many properties a particular property manager might handle, and you can speak from your own experience with what you manage for yourself. But how many properties how much is too much? I mean, I'm assuming any property manager, regardless of the size of the operation, you can potentially take on more than you can bite off more than you could chew. You don't want to juggle too many things at once, but you want to have enough that it's worth your while, I guess.
Right, right. I mean, I don't know that there's really a magic number. It's just really going to be dependent upon the company itself and what services they're providing their customers and the amount of customers that they have to deal with.
The size of the operation. And
the size of the operation. I don't particularly like to take more than 15 or 20 properties on myself at any given time.
Right.
But that's just because I'm not a huge operation. But if I had 2 or 3 employees, or even just one, I have one, but if I had 2 or more, then I might take on a few more properties. But I don't like to spread myself too thin. Yeah. If I've specialized in property management now, that's a different story. But a lot of real estate agents will diversify. So we'll do a little bit of property management. As brokers, brokers are really the only ones that can do property management unless they get unless you get authorization from your broker. So if you want to do property management for anybody, you would just have to get authorization from me to do so.
There you go. Get permission.
Yes, because there's a lot of other stuff in the background, like trust accounts and stuff like that for security deposits, holdings, and that sort of thing. So a broker is really the only one that can manage that.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, I guess it just really. I don't know that I know the cap for myself, but I don't know that I can really speak to other operations. Yeah. You just have to shop around, see what level, manage your expectations as well. So I mean that's a pretty good way to determine what you're going to get as from a property manager.
If someone's looking for a property manager and they say, "Look, I want some references. I want to talk to some people you're working with." I mean, is that okay? Is that permissible to do that? Because we have a lot of rules we have to operate with in the real estate industry.
If they, I mean, it's really going to be on a case by case basis. Yeah. I don't know that it would bother me one way or another to give you the name of one of my clients.
Essentially, you're hiring a contractor to do a job.
Well, a lot of our business also is mouth to mouth, is word of mouth. Sorry.
Yeah.
Couldn't put the two together. Word mouth to mouth, word of word.
Yeah,
but, so a lot of our business to begin with is going to be word of mouth.
Right. And but as with any contractor, you want to kind of check them out, know what they're what's the quality of their work. Are people satisfied with what they're doing and so forth. You want to know those things. So, but it's I've known over the years, I've known several people myself that owned a lot of rental property. They had 10, 15 houses, or they had a small, like a couple of quadruplexes or something, And I can see where if you've got that much rental property in your portfolio, you almost have to have someone to help you.
Oh, yeah,
it's just too much for one guy to keep up with, and I'm sure there's some owners that can do that, but that's where it becomes so important to try to find a qualified property manager and someone that can meet your expectations, because when you've got that many properties, that becomes a lot to juggle, a lot to take care of, and I can't imagine myself owning that many properties and trying to manage every detail from the collection of the rents to making sure that they're keeping the grass cut, whatever, all the little things. I can't imagine trying to keep up with all of that. That would be a colossal task.
Investors there's different levels of investors too. So I got some investors that prefer apartment complexes for that simple purpose, is that it's easier to manage because all the properties are in one location,
it's on one spot.
So if you have if you're doing single family properties, obviously these are going to be spread out over an area. That makes management a little bit more complicated. Yeah. But it's just managing expectations, I think, is the main thing, and finding the right service for you.
Yeah. So if someone comes to you as a broker and says, "I want you to manage my property for me," what's the first step in you evaluating whether you want to work with that client or not?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do? What's the first thing you do from your end as the broker?
I think the property itself would probably be what I look at. Where is the property located? There's certain properties, certain areas that I don't really. I don't dislike working in them, but I would rather not. I don't really want to do duplexes and fourplexes and multiple families. They're just a little bit harder to manage because neighbors can be a problem. So I personally prefer single family homes to manage.
Right.
And that's pretty much it. I mean, I don't really pick and choose too much.
Yeah, but then beyond that,
If somebody
then you
wants me to help them, I'll help them out as much as I can.
right, and then beyond that, you have to figure out you know the cost of services, what you need to charge them, what kind of level of service you're going to provide. You have to have that conversation.
It depends too on what the situation is. If they're military, they're going to be overseas. Usually, I'll take care of their property for a little bit less of a fee or whatever, and to help out my military friends and stuff like that. But
and I would guess that's a more common thing here, being that we have a large military base here.
Yeah, a lot of people buy houses and then they decide that they want to rent it out after they get PCS somewhere else, rather than trying to sell it. And so, that opens up an opportunity to do property management for your clients like that.
Right.
That was how I got started with property management. It was actually property managing homes for people that had PCS out of here, and they were on my list of clients.
Right. And, from a purely a business standpoint, how, for the property manager, if someone's specialized, how lucrative a business is that in an area like Wichita Falls, for example? It's
not very lucrative.
Yeah.
No. I mean, it can be, but that would have to be a volume based.
Yeah.
If you're going to specialize in property management by itself, it can be pretty lucrative, but it requires a lot of work too.
Right. It's how much effort are you willing to put into it?
Well, if you want to keep your clients, you better have a good list of things that you provide.
Yeah, and that's one of the key expectations that any client's going to have is, are you doing the job?
Yeah.
Are you doing the work for me? And again, they've got to be willing to pay for whatever level of service whatever their expectations are. There's a cost involved in that. But still, I can understand how in a city like Wichita Falls, for example, you probably couldn't make a really super living as just a property manager. If you're
once again, it just depends on the amount of properties that you have that you're property managing. I mean, if you're property managing an apartment complex of 283 units or something like that, which we do have here in Wichita Falls, we do have some that are over 200 units. Then, obviously that's going to be your sole job.
I want to change gears here for just a moment. We just have a few minutes left in the show, and I want to change gears for just a minute here. One of the things that we've talked about on the show before, and we've talked about privately, obviously, is the inventory. When we're talking about home sales, the available inventory in the market. Right now in our area, inventory's tight. It's very.
I think it's very much. Nationally, I think we're having a problem with inventory because I'm seeing it on the news. I'm seeing it everywhere.
I was going to say,
it's not just Wichita Falls, but yes, here in Wichita Falls, we are having an inventory problem.
I saw a piece from I think it was from the National Association of Realtors. So this was a nationwide piece just a couple of days ago that talked about that inventory issue and what do we do about it? How do we turn that corner? And we don't have time to get into all of the things that I've read about, but essentially it's a situation that is nationwide.
Correct.
Texas is experiencing an especially tight market on inventory because we have so many people relocating to our state.
And a lot of businesses that are opening up here.
Yes.
Austin is getting Tesla, and there's a couple of other companies that are going into the Austin-Houston area. Dallas is always, their turnover is pretty common, and I think that there's a lot more industry that's coming into Texas, so that's creating a lot of new buyers.
Well, in terms of inventory, and someone asked me this question, said, "Well, why aren't we just building more homes to sell? Why aren't more homes being built?" It all comes down to not just supply and demand, but cost also. I mean, the cost.
The cost to build a home is actually rising right now because of COVID. I mean, we do at Strategic, we do build new homes, and we have some new homes that we are building over on Northwest Drive. But we've been finding that the original cost projections for those homes has risen since COVID. The price of lumber, so we're trying to create income. We're trying to create homes that are economical and between 160 and 175, so that we can start to move some of our inventory. But we're just struggling with the cost of it.
Yeah, well, the cost of all lumber has skyrocketed. A very common item in any build is wall studs, 92 and 5/8 studs that you could buy a year and a half ago for $2.99. Now they're $6.
Yeah. There's a lot of new builds that are coming along in the state of Texas in general. But I think a lot of the things that we need to start doing too is we need to start fixing up the inventory that we already have. There's a lot of buyers that are scared to sell right now because there's nothing for them to move into after the fact.
Right.
Repos are on hiatus right now. There's a moratorium on all of foreclosures until maybe June or July. So we are struggling with a lot of issues that are outside outside forces. So
factors we can't necessarily fix.
So we just had to kind of tune in and hang on.
We'll see how things evolve, and things will evolve and change. There's all sorts of factors that go into the amount of inventory and the new construction and all that, and all those things will change. And I think we will turn a corner at some point soon. I think you have to.
Right. It's just going to take a minute. Like anything in Texas, so just give it a minute.
Demand for it's going to dictate that we got to move forward, and we will move forward. I think things as far as the way the pandemic has affected everything, I think we really are about to turn a corner in that, and a positive one. Very soon.
Hopefully.
And I think I can see people's attitudes are changing. They're growing tired of not being able to do certain things.
Right.
And so people are forcing some change to happen there. So we're going to wrap it up here, this edition of Strategic Moves with Lou. And if people want to get in touch with us at Strategic Realty, you can go to strategicrealty.net. Obviously, you can do that. You can call the office, 940-689-7900.
Yes, sir.
I got it right. How about that? I got it right.
He's learning.
I'm learning. I'm memorizing the numbers, and I have so many of them in my life I have to keep up with.
Yeah. Or you can also subscribe, like, and share to YouTube.
Yeah.
And we also have our podcast is also live, so you can go to Spotify or any of the other hosting services that you use. Share
this with all your friends, please.
Share.
We'll see you next time right here with another episode of Strategic Moves with Lou, live from, and I want to mention this, live from recorded in, I should say, the MacTech Solutions studios that we have. And we want to thank our friend Terry McAdams and MacTech Solutions for providing this setup for us and taking care of the technical side of this for us.
Absolutely.
So, another episode of Strategic Moves with Lou coming your way very soon.